Today I want to talk about 5 things that I've done that many people would call huge mistakes that has made me a ton of money. I've done a lot of things with money over the years. Most of them are typical, but some of them are what people would consider huge mistakes, but they paid out big for me. And I want to go through some of those and show you that just because it's common wisdom doesn't necessarily mean it's the wrong thing to do if the circumstances are right. So the first one I want to dive into is having high credit card debt. So when I started my company, I ended up going into massive amounts of credit card debt, $30,000 worth. It was one of the most stressful times of my life, paying almost $1,000 in interest every single month. But because of this high credit card debt, I was able to take whatever cash I normally would have paid onto my credit cards and put it into my company, enabling me to invest probably about $80,000 more into my company. And that has paid out very well. So you have to remember that range of money that I've talked about before. I'll link that video right up here. And you have to understand the return on the investment and the cost of the money you're using. At that time, I didn't have very much access to credit lines of low interest and things like that, or a home equity line of credit I could use. Credit cards were the only thing I could use, but I knew the return had the potential to outweigh the cost of that interest. The second one is massive portfolio specialization, the exact opposite of diversification. Diversify, diversify, diversify. They all tell you all the time. What no one tells you is if you actually perfectly diversify your portfolio, you wouldn't make any money. It would all net neutral. So I started a company about 7 or 8 years ago that I've talked about before, and currently 85% of my net worth is in that company. I'm about $2.5 million worth of net worth, and about 1.9 to 2 of that is that company. So I'm massively specialized in that company. But here's the thing, you're likely never gonna generate generational wealth by going with a fully diversified, slow-growing portfolio. You're gonna have to take these big risks. And that's exactly what I did. And by specializing in this startup, I was able to go from effectively a $0 net worth to a $2.5 million net worth over the span of 8 to 9 years. Specialization can bring on a lot of risk, but without risk, there's no reward, right? Speaking of risk, the next one is spending more than half of my income on my house. Everyone will tell you don't spend more than half your income on your house. Many people will tell you to spend less than 30% of your income on your house. But I've never not done that. I've always had a 50 to 60% of my income going to my house. Now that's for a few different reasons. I treat my primary residence as an investment. Granted, the first property that I bought in San Jose was a bit of luck. I just happened to buy in San Jose at a decent time and we profited very well. This house that I'm in currently, I treat it a lot more like an investment. Now, I'm a lot looser on the investment methodology when I'm buying a primary residence because I'm a big fan of spending money to have the space in the property and the space in the house to make my family comfortable and happy. And that's part of the reason that we're spending so much in our income, and it should still pay out handsomely. Our San Jose house, we ended up profiting about $275,000 on when we sold it, and we should profit $250,000 to $500,000 when we sell this house in, say, 5 years or so. Speaking of houses, that's a transition, right? Using debt regularly. Debt is bad. Don't use debt. Don't leverage yourself, blah, 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 blah. Like portfolio specialization, debt can add risk to your portfolio. It can add risk to your life, but you need to understand how to use it because debt can be an incredibly powerful tool if used properly. With every property that I buy, I use as much debt as possible. This house that I'm currently in, I bought for 5% down. My house in San Jose that I had bought was 5% down. My first real estate investment property, we got a 20% down mortgage, but I used my M1 Borrow credit line to fund about 10% of that. So I got the house for about 10% down. And I use that M1 Borrow line to float cash all the time. When we're a little low one month, I'll use that M1 Borrow line and pay it off through the next month or two. And I'll use it to fund investments that are timely, like that real estate investment property that I just mentioned, or maybe even buying some stock when it's really low. Potentially even putting it in a BlockFi to buy some crypto. And on top of that, every single purchase my family makes that can go on a credit card does go on a credit card. It goes onto my Citi Double Cashback credit card that I pay off every single month. So I never carry a balance, I never pay any interest on there, but I'm using debt all the time for almost every single dollar that goes out of my life. So debt is not bad. Debt can be leveraged as a very powerful tool, and that's what I've done with debt. And I just want to say one more time, debt can be used unintelligently. Don't use debt to buy fancy cars that aren't going to appreciate or other stuff that I never buy. Don't get yourself in a bad position. Understand debt, understand lines of credit, and understand investments before you do this, but it can be incredibly powerful. Now, the last one is a little bit less of a money mistake, but it's working too much. Work-life balance is something that everyone talks about. And I want to talk about work-life balance quickly. I think to really understand what work-life balance is, you have to have a large amount of self-awareness. Now, I'm not one of those people that wants to just watch their kids on a playground all weekend or sit on a beach and do nothing for a week. It's just not fun for me. I don't like feeling like I'm not progressing towards my goals, which are heavily financial related. And if that's you, that's entirely fine. And you need to structure your investments and your work-life balance towards those goals. And for me, my goals are very financially based, and work is the most fun thing I can possibly do in a single day or a week or a month or a year. And that's why I love working all the time. That's why I wake up at 5:15 on the weekends, even to get some work in, because when I get that work in the morning, I feel better the rest of the day. And I try and get things done throughout the day as well. So don't judge people on their work-life balance. Everyone's got their own thing. Be self-aware, and we can, make some stuff happen. So remember, just because it's common wisdom and these finance YouTubers are telling you that this is the way that it is, that doesn't mean that's always the way that it is. You need to understand the concepts behind debt, behind credit cards, behind these rules of thumb when buying a house and buying a car, and understand what all those things mean. You need to understand how to analyze investments and then make the right decisions for you. Personal finance is just that. It is extremely personal. You need to make the right decisions for you and your family, and those are going to vary across from person to person. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, share it with someone that might like it. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.